Today, the Baldrige Foundation is delighted to recognize John R. Heer, Jr. as the recipient of the 4th Annual Harry S. Hertz Leadership Award. John, congratulations. John is the only person on the planet, literally, to have led 3 different organizations that received the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. He led Baptist Hospital in Pensacola when they received the award in 2003. In 2006, he led North Mississippi Medical Center when they received the Baldrige Award, and he led North Mississippi Health Services when they received the award in 2012. That's quite a trifecta. John is a true believer in the concept of servant leadership, so as you would expect, his primary focus is people. It's his customers, his physicians, his employees, his partners that are the motivating force for quality improvements. John excites and empowers the people around him to embrace quality and to never stop striving for better and better and better and better performance. John is currently the founder and CEO of P3 Leadership, the 3 Ps being people, purpose, and passion. He's got a website that I think you would enjoy looking at. If you can remember this, it's P3, that part's easy. The rest is going to be leadership.com, but it's not all of the letters of leadership. So it's P3LDRSHP.com, P3LDRSHP.com. This award is given in recognition of John's role model leadership and enormous contributions to the advancement of performance excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, John Heer.
Congratulations. Appreciate it.
You want to move this?
Yeah, and
we're going to get a picture first.
okay.
So we get top one.
Right here. I was looking for the clicker, so got to have the clicker. Can we have one more bathroom joke? Don't wear your lavalier when you go to the bathroom either. So somebody at our table said he's actually done that before. First of all, what a great honor. I'll just start off by saying that I want to thank a few people. First of all, God for his guidance and direction. I actually got interested in Baldrige back in 1990, probably 6 or 7. Healthcare wasn't able to apply for the award back then, but I read through the criteria and I thought, man, that's how you run a great company. And I took it into my boss at the time and went through it with him, and after about 20 seconds, his eyes started glazing over, and he said, we have Joint Commission. We don't need Baldrige. So we didn't get started on the journey until we went to Baptist in 2003. But I do want to thank God for all of his leadership and for helping through the years. I want to thank my wife, Pollyanna, for standing behind me and sometimes kicking me in the seat of the pants when I didn't feel like pursuing and keeping going. I do want to thank the foundation. This is a great honor. I love Baldrige. I just say that. I love Baldrige, everything about it. It's such a good role model. I can't understand why we can't get more people involved in it. And that's one of the things that I'm going to try to work on. I have semi-retired, and people have asked me, what does that mean? I said, well, the retirement part's pretty good, but I hadn't figured out what the semi part of it is. The second to last group is the thousands of employees that I've worked with over the years. As many people have said, both today and yesterday, one person can't win the Baldrige Award. It has to be an entire organization, from somebody sweeping the floor to, cooking back in the cafeteria to the CEO to the board. Everybody has to be involved. And I've worked literally with thousands of people over the years that I love dearly and really appreciate all the effort that they have put into really what I would call more than Baldrige, I would call culture. And in fact, in all the organizations that I've been associated with, we never really said we're doing Baldrige. We said what we're doing is we're creating a great culture. And if you look through the Baldrige criteria and really study it, that's what you'll see is that it is culture. That's what Baldrige is all about. So that's what my talk's going to be about today. But before I get to the talk, I do also want to thank Joel and Josh Ettinger. I've worked with Joel for 15 years, and he's given me a lot of insight into the Baldrige process and how to write an application. And yes, believe it or not, probably, let me count, 10, I've written 10 Category 1s. We've had 7 site visits. Several calls from Heer. Those of you in the audience may know that when you actually receive the Baldrige Award, the Secretary of Commerce calls you. And if you don't receive the Baldrige Award, Harry Hertz calls you. And I'll never forget the third site visit when I was at Baptist. I was driving home from work, and my phone rang, and we hadn't gotten a call all day from Baldrige, so, I'm thinking, well, Secretary of Commerce isn't going to be calling. Sure enough, I looked at my cell phone and said, Harry Hertz, and I just picked it up and said, Harry, quit calling. And the next year he didn't. Don Evans called, so that was a great pleasure. The other kind of interesting thing is, I believe if I counted correctly, yesterday the Baldrige Award recipients, 2 of them are from Missouri. It's got Missouri, right? And 2 of them are there. One of them is from there. And I was actually born in Independence, Missouri. So I don't know exactly what that means. It must be something in the water. That's the Missouri folks over there, so. And then one other quick funny story, at least I thought it was funny. In 2012, I got to work extra early. I'm waiting for the Baldrige call, hoping that it's going to be Secretary of Commerce Rebecca Blank. My cell phone rang, and I was so nervous that I picked up the phone, and it had gone to sleep. And when whatever I pressed to wake it up also hung up the phone. So I was thinking to myself, well, I just hung up the phone on the Secretary of Commerce. That's probably not good. And about 30 seconds later, my direct line rang, and it was her. So that was a pleasure. Well, let me get started. Now, I don't have a timer up here, and I have a tendency to go a little long. So, Harry, if you could kind of give me one of these after whatever time I've got, because I'm going to be talking about something that I'm very passionate about, something that I love, something that I feel like is my purpose in life. And you notice that culture just changed to what? People. It's not the soft stuff. And there's been a lot of articles written here lately that are talking about culture and how powerful culture can be and all that. And there's a lot of people that are talking still about strategy and how important strategy is. And you don't really see a lot of people talking about the importance of an engaged workforce, engaged employees, in our case, engaged physicians, the volunteers, communities, and everyone else. So I've got a few quotes I want to run through here fairly quickly. Peter Drucker, one of my heroes, he was very popular when I was in undergraduates, and he's been quoted many times as saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I looked that up, but I Googled, and when I Googled, the second quote came up, and I'd never seen this second quote before. The second quote says, they used to think that corporate culture didn't matter. Discussion of vision mission and values was for people who couldn't build a product or sell it. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting coming from the father of modern management, that he's that committed to culture. So what is culture? I typed that in. I Googled culture. And the first thing that came up astounded me. You know, there's lots, you could go to Webster and a lot of the other people, but the first one that came up right on the top was from Investopedia.com, and it says corporate culture refers to the beliefs and behaviors that determine how a company's employees and management act. Often, this is the scary part, often corporate culture is implied, not expressly defined, develops organically over time from the cumulative traits of the people that the company hires. Now think about that for just a second. Does that scare you to think about a company that basically kind of just lets things happen? They don't really have a plan. It develops organically over time. I'm not even sure exactly what that means. And it's just a cumulative effect of the traits of the people that the company hires. Well, how many CEOs get fired from these companies? So then I'm sitting there thinking, all right, well, if we're hiring all these people that we're firing, what kind of a culture are we actually creating in this company? That scared me. So then a friend of mine, Jim Hunter, who wrote the book, The Servant, told me about an article that was in Fortune magazine. Now, Fortune every year has their top 100 companies to work for in America, okay? And this is the first time I've actually seen an article written about the list, and it's by a Fortune writer. His name's Jeff Colvin. And I just took 5 or 6 quotes out of this article. It's real long. You can actually find it on my website. Oh, by the way, my website that was mentioned earlier, that I developed that in the spirit of Baldrige sharing. It's all free. You can go out there and look at the stuff. We've got a philosophy page. We've got the tips page, which actually is sort of an implementation guide if you're interested in any of this stuff that I'm talking about today. And also I put the Fortune article out there. But it said in the article, analyzing these 100 companies, the secret to attracting and holding on to the world's best talent isn't about the perks, it's about the relationships. And then he goes on, he says, you realize by now we're talking about culture, the way people behave from moment to moment without being told to do so. More employers are seeing the connection from culture and relationships to workplace greatness and business success. Now, I've talked to several people while I've been here this week, and what's interesting to me is that going back to like the 90s and into the early thousands, you hardly ever heard people talking about culture. Even at the Baldrige Award ceremony in 2003, I believe there were 7 of us that got the award that year, and not one person really talked about culture other than us. And I guess that's how, we kind of figured out that culture, and now, yesterday, every single person that came up on stage talked about culture. So I think what we're seeing is a big change in the environment now, the business environment, where people are starting to realize how important culture is. So much so that Deloitte did a survey of 3,300 executives, and what they said in 106 countries, that top managers say culture is the most important issue that they face. And culture was Merriam-Webster's 2014 Word of the Year. And this is kind of frightening. Yet, as employers increasingly grasp its importance, they also realize they have no clue where to begin in creating the culture that we need. And you know where my answer to that is? Right here. Baldrige can help you create that kind of a culture. So if I could talk to that, maybe I'll call this Jeff guy up and talk to him about it. But I think, that Baldrige would be a great way for them, do an article on that and talk about how that can help create a culture. Wharton College, Alex Edmonds, exhaustively investigated several hypotheses, and he concluded that investors don't get it either. They simply don't understand that great places work better. And a corollary, I love this one, a corollary is that most employers don't get it either. Why do they let the 100 best clean their clocks year after year when the secret is no secret at all? The answer is a mystery. We know 100 companies that hope that they never figure it out. So what we've got here is we've got a change right now going on in the environment. We've got a recognition that culture is extremely important, but then we also have a recognition that a lot of people really don't know what culture is or how to start to change it. And this is just a sampling of some of the companies that most of you will probably recognize that have been on that 100 best list for several years now. So what do you guess the one thing that's most common among Baldrige Award winners and other role models? Great culture and great people. And culture in a nutshell, as far from my perspective, is who you are, how you behave, your relationships with your employees, your customers, your suppliers, your community, basically everybody that you've got contact with. So I came up with, since I'm semi-retired, I came up with my own definition of a servant culture. And a servant culture is a servant leader or servant-led employee-first environment designed to ensure the employee's highest priority needs are being met with character that inspires confidence. It's mission-driven, it's values, vision-focused, value-centered, employee-centric, and customer devoted. It's based on the following servant leadership characteristics: humility, patience, kindness, respectfulness, selflessness, forgiveness, honesty, commitment, but a results-oriented, no excuses environment and an ego directed toward team accomplishments. Now think about it for a minute. Think about bosses that you've had in your life. How many of them exhibited these characteristics? Humility, patience, kindness, respectfulness. Sadly, I think back through my career, and I've had a couple, maybe, but unfortunately, most of them didn't have those kind of behaviors. But wouldn't it be a wonderful place to work if you could be in that type of environment? So why is focusing on employees so important? And this is a little tongue-in-cheek, who's going to implement all your great ideas? Who's going to make your product or deliver your service? Who's going to give great customer service? Who's going to control your costs? Who's going to help you to grow your organization? And if you think about it, the front line is what most of our customers see. They don't see what goes on in the leadership section. And I told this story this morning, but I went to a well-known coffee shop. I won't name the name of it, but it's just around the corner here. And I was waiting in line. There's a gentleman in front of me, and he was, obviously been there before because he started rattling off his drink, a double caramel macchiato with a light this and a light that and all this other stuff. And the girl behind the counter, a young lady, was nice, pleasant, but she looked like she was just going through the motions. So much so that the guy asked her, is something wrong? Because he recognized that wasn't the type of service that he was accustomed to getting at this particular place. And so that interaction right there was how that gentleman, and then me, because I was behind him and the person behind me, that's the impression that we have of that place. So it makes a huge difference. But seriously, it's the right thing to do. Treating others the way that we want to be treated. You create a superior culture. It leads to dedicated employees and lower turnover. In healthcare, to replace an RN right now costs about $40,000 by the time you recruit them and get them on the floor fully functioning. So it can actually help you lower cost as well. Servant leaders are trusted, empowering, and respectful, which leads to engaged employees who give their all, their efforts, their ideas. Now imagine having an engaged workforce that was so engaged that they were giving you great ideas, they were innovating, They were willing to make the changes that you were trying to, instead of you trying to fight with them all the time, they were actually right there with you. It'd be great. They create customer loyalty, higher quality products and services. They actually participate and help in the financial performance. And then you can have growth because you're doing all of those things well. So in 2012, probably one of the things I'm most proud of as far as Baldrige scoring at North Mississippi, and those of you that don't know these are the people categories, and we scored in the 90 to 100 range in all three of the people categories, so we were very, very honored with that result. So I had a lot of people ask me, how do you sustain the effort, 2003, 2006, 2012. I don't know which one of them was the hardest, probably between 2006 and 2012, because it was at the same organization and we had to sustain it over that long period. When I thought about it, it's really three words: focus, discipline, execution, and also a whole lot of prayer. And I'm going to run out of time, but I got to tell this quick story. It was our second or third site visit at Baptist. And it was obvious we had two examiners in the room, which I think means that one of them is a junior, like maybe their first time, and the other one's an inexperienced examiner. Is that how that works, Harry? It might be, but anyway, this young man asked this bizarre question. And it was like, well, what if Mars struck Venus? What would you do for a contingency plan? And it's like, I thought for a second and I said, well, I'd probably say a prayer. And he said, no, really. And I said, no, really. And he kind of looked at me, like, and I don't know what he wrote, but I know it wasn't good. Unable to answer question. But I'm here to tell you today that I do pray and it does work. So, under focus, just a few items: continual reference to the mission, the vision, the values, and the critical success factors. Reminders throughout the organization. You can't let the employees forget why you're there and what things are about. And then I like to organize the critical success factor, all of our agendas, all of our presentations, all of our results reporting, all discussions, everything is organized around those CSFs. And what that allows you to do then is to tie your entire activity back to the mission and the vision and the values, which is why, hopefully why, your employees are actually working there. And then also it's very important to connect the dots and explain to employees why and how it fits with the mission, the vision, and values. And then don't chase rabbits. One of the gentlemen yesterday said something about, like, he would go off to the seminar and he'd come back and he would implement something, and everybody would say, well, we'll go along with it for 6 months, and then he'll forget about it and he'll be on to something else. That's chasing rabbits. You can't chase rabbits. Under discipline, eliminate programs of the month approach, which is what I was just talking about. In response to questions, and you get a lot of questions, just ask them, well, how does that relate to our mission, vision, values, and critical success factors? You'd be surprised how many times people's great ideas will all of a sudden go out the window. Usually, a lot of times the great ideas, for personal gain. So when you ask them that question, then that kind of takes that off the table. Be able to say no in a nice way, and we have a hard time doing that sometimes in leadership. Sometimes you just have to say, no, we can't do that. That doesn't fit in with our strategic plan or with our mission or vision or values or something like that. Utilize and communicate a very systematic review of results tied to your mission and your vision and your values. And that's crucial to do. It's hard to do, especially in healthcare, because we've got literally thousands of things that we measure, but there are ways that we can actually roll things up and create report cards that employees can understand. And it's extremely important to communicate this, because when employees don't have information, there's a void created. When that void's created, they fill it with something. And guess what they fill it with? Drama. okay? There's some kind of dramas created, they're not telling us this, they're not telling us that, they're trying to get away, they're trying to pull over fast one. So you've got to communicate it. You got to have the results first, but then you have to be able to communicate it. And then the execution, and this is what we struggled with most, I think, in every organization I've ever worked with, is we have a good idea, we roll it out, we start doing it, and then it dies. And what I've learned over the years is the first thing you have to do is clearly and widely communicate it. You have to let people know why you're doing it. You tie it back to the mission and the vision and the values and the critical success factors. You establish expectations of performance. This doesn't seem like very complicated stuff, does it? But why do so many of us not do it? Create monitor metrics. Reward and recognize champions. You have to coach low performers, and you may have to move some continual low performers out of leadership positions or out of the organization. And in closing, a couple of quotes from my favorite servant leader. You can probably guess by now who my favorite servant leader is. John 13:14. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set an example that you should do as I've done for you. And then Jesus, talking to Simon, said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. And it must have been pretty important because Jesus asked him the same question 3 times. Thank you very much.
Well, for 28 years, the Baldrige community has been identifying role model organizations. Well, now we're identifying role model individuals, and you've met one here today. John, I want to thank you for all of us for wherever you went. He was headed to the bathroom.
Got my mic on.
I wanted to thank you for what you're doing for our world.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And now that you've heard from John, I want to repeat that website for you. It's p3ldrshp.com. And if you don't write it down and forget it, ask me when you see me walking around, I'll give it to you again. This concludes our recognition ceremony. Concurrent sessions will start soon. Thank you for being here.